They found the visor before they found me. It was sitting on a supply crate in the ruined depot, cracked clean across the left lens, and the alien quartermaster who picked it up turned it over twice before she saw the scratches on the inside of the plastic. 11 of them, scored deep with the tip of a combat knife, never deep enough to crack the shell. She brought it to me without a word and set it on the table between us, and I knew what she wanted before she asked. "What are these?" she said. Not a question, really. A demand dressed as one. I picked it up and ran my thumb across the marks the way I had 100 times before, in the dark, when I couldn't sleep and needed something solid to hold on to. She sat down across from me, arms folded, waiting. She'd lost people too. Her whole outpost had gone under in one night, the swarm pouring through the eastern gate faster than anyone could close it, and she still didn't understand how 7 humans had held the southern line until dawn. I think she believed the scratches were a tally of kills. Most people did, when they first saw them. It was an easier thing to believe than the truth. "The night the eastern gate fell," I said, "I was running triage out of the grain silo. No defenses, no high ground, just me, a medkit that was already half empty, and whoever made it through the dark to find me." She didn't interrupt. I respected that about her. The first one came in carried over another soldier's shoulder, gut wound, bleeding out fast. I had maybe 4 minutes before he was gone for good. I didn't have 4 minutes to spare on anyone, not with the swarm noise getting louder outside, but I gave it to him anyway, because that's the job. When I got the bleeding stopped, I scored 1 line inside my visor. Not for him. For me. So I'd remember that I'd done it, in case my hands started shaking too hard to remember anything on their own. I didn't think she'd make the night. She did. Third was an engineer who'd taken shrapnel to the throat and could only breathe through a straw I cut from a water hose. Fourth was someone I never even got the name of, unconscious the whole time, gone before I could ask. I scored the line anyway. I didn't need the name to remember the face. The swarm was inside the perimeter wall by then. I could hear them in the corridor outside the silo door, that clicking they do, and I remember thinking, very calmly, that I had maybe 90 seconds before they came through, and none of it would matter anymore. So I worked faster. Eighth line was a man who begged me to leave him and go, and I told him no, and I meant it, and he lived to be angry with me about it later. Ninth was the quietest one. Didn't make a sound the whole time I worked, just watched my hands like he was studying for an exam he already knew he'd pass. And the swarm, she said. It got into the silo. It got into the silo. I scored the 10th line one-handed, because my other hand had a knife in it for a different reason by then. I set the visor down between us. 11th line, I made after the door came down, and the line held anyway. Held because 7 of the people I'd patched up that night picked themselves back up and went and held it. Not because of me, because they wouldn't lie down after I'd put the work into keeping them up. I scored that line for all of them at once. Couldn't fit 11 separate names on a piece of cracked plastic the size of my palm, so I let the 11th stand for the whole rest of it. She was quiet for a long time after that. Long enough that I thought she might ask the obvious question, and long enough that I almost hoped she wouldn't. She got up and walked to the window, looking out at the depot yard where the daylight lay flat and white across the broken crates and the burned-out transport frames. For a while, neither of us said anything. I could hear the wind moving through a gap in the roof somewhere above us, a thin whistling sound that hadn't stopped since the building took damage. That's more than 7. Some of them I'd already patched up earlier that week. Smaller things. A burn, a fracture, a fever that wouldn't break. They don't get a line because the wound didn't need one that night. I only scored a line when I genuinely didn't think someone would survive. And they did anyway. That's the rule I made for myself, around the 3rd hour, without deciding to make it. A line means I was wrong about the odds. She turned back from the window then. You wanted to be wrong. Every time, I said. I have never once wanted to be right about who wasn't going to make it. I just got good at guessing, because guessing right kept me from wasting time on the ones I couldn't help, while there was still someone 2 cots over who needed it more. That's the part nobody tells you about this work. You don't get to save everyone. You get to choose, fast, with bad information, and live with the choosing afterward. Is that why you keep it? She asked, nodding at the visor. To live with it. I keep it because I don't trust my own memory of that night. The scratches are real. I can put my thumb on them and know they happened. No, I didn't imagine the weight of it. She was quiet again, and this time I let the silence sit instead of filling it. There's room for a 12th, she said finally, touching the edge of the visor where the plastic ran out, an inch of clear space below the last scratch. Why didn't you use it? I looked at that empty inch for a while before I answered. I walked out of that silo on a leg that turned out to be broken in 2 places and didn't notice for 6 more hours because I was too busy checking on everyone else's wounds to check my own. That's not an answer. No, I said. It isn't. I think the truth is I never believed I'd earned a line of my own. The others fought to stay alive. I just stood still and did the job in front of me. Doesn't feel like the same thing, even when people tell me it is. She picked the visor up herself then, turned it over once more, and set it back down facing me. 11 people are alive who would not be, she said, because you stood still and did the job in front of you. Where I come from, that earns the 12th line whether you score it or not. I didn't answer that. I just looked at the empty inch of plastic below the last scratch, and for the first time since that night, I let myself consider that she might be right. She left the visor on the table and went to find the others, and I sat alone with it for a while in the white depot light, turning it over the way I always did, thumb finding each line in order without needing to look. 11 small arguments I'd lost. 11 nights I could have been right about the odds and wasn't. I thought about the boy with the shoulder wound, who was probably out in the yard right now arguing with someone about whether he could carry his own pack yet. I thought about the quiet one, who still hadn't told me his name even after everything, like it was a thing he was saving for later. I never did score that 12th line myself. Some habits outlast the reasons you built them. But I stopped covering it with my thumb when people asked to see the visor, and I left the crack in the lens unfixed even after the engineers offered twice to patch it, because the crack was where the light caught the scratches just right, and I had come to think that mattered more than I used to admit. I think that was its own kind of answer, the only one I had to give, and the only one that was ever going to be true.